Hey, welcome to Master Ministry. We're all about here talking about tips and truths and tools that'll help you in your ministry to be approved of God and to be effective in your ministry for Jesus Christ. I'm Doug Hammett, your host. So glad you're here with me. We're starting on an adventure here. We're talking about my trip into Burma, Myanmar, and what I want to do is to begin just kind of walking through a little bit of what we do in doing a survey and in going through and working with a missionary with the idea of setting up a strategy for reaching people with the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, I'd actually recorded this already before I left on my trip, and unfortunately, I did not set up my microphone properly, and so I didn't end up with any sound. So I had to go back, and that's what I'm doing right now is we're going to kind of go back and we're going to start this all over again. Hope to be able to post this one, and Lord willing, we're going to actually have some sound on this particular video. So I'm going to keep it somewhat short. This first one that we're going to be talking about is really the survey that a missionary would do as he's going into a country, taking a look, trying to determine where he's going to be settling. I made a trip on into Thailand, right on the border of Burma, which is now called Myanmar. And so we're going to be looking at Myanmar because that's part of where we were and where we were looking at reaching people with the gospel of Jesus Christ. The missionary I was with is not able to live in Myanmar. However, he wants to be able to reach in there and reach some of the people. And so that's his goal. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as we move forward with all of this. But as we do this, one of the things that concerns me about missionaries going to a foreign field is that they not just be throwing a dart at a map and hoping somehow it's all going to stick. So we're going to talk about some of the things that you ought to be looking for as you get ready to go and do a survey trip and try to determine what information is going to be helpful in helping you be able to understand more about the people that you're considering reaching. Now, as we were preparing to go over there to Thailand, our plan was to work our way into Myanmar, and the missionary's goal was to be able to work with the Shan people. That's his desire, at least. And so that was part of what we were looking at, but we wanted to get, of course, a good understanding of the lay of the land. And you'll notice here that Myanmar borders on Thailand right here, and the missionary himself is actually located right here where the little hand is showing, and right on the border. In fact, he lives on a border town just right next to Myanmar and able to work his way on in there and to be able to talk with people and hopefully be able to reach them with the gospel of Jesus Christ. Myanmar is a government-controlled, a military-controlled government, and therefore a lot of things are really controlled and watched by the government, and they're concerned about anything that might disrupt their country. I understand that, and certainly we were very concerned that we be able to follow the laws and not cause any kind of trouble within the land. That's not our desire. We want to bring the message of Jesus Christ to men and women that are interested in the truth of God's Word. And so as you begin doing this survey, one of the things that I find very helpful in doing a survey in any country is to keep in mind the acrostic of share places. That's exactly what we're doing when we go into a new culture. We are sharing places with other people, with people groups that are much different than us. And when you take the word share and then places, plural, and you look only at the consonants, not at the vowels, only at the consonants, you walk away with some things to be able to look for. One of them being you want to be looking at structures. What kind of houses are there? One of the things that I recommend you do is simply go to Google. Boy, with Google, so many things are now at your fingertips. Used to be, we'd go to the library and we'd start looking up whatever books were available. Many of them would be old books and not necessarily up to date. Of course, the internet, you can't trust everything that's on there. But by typing in Myanmar, you could also type Burma in this case, you're going to come up with some information that's going to be of some help. One of them, I just start opening up one page after another, and right-click and click on Open in a New Link, which I've already done, and so I'm not going to do that again. But Wikipedia is one of my favorites. Not guaranteed that everything that's on there will be right. Here's one, Comprehensive Guide on Myanmar, which will be interesting to take a look at. some of the pictures. Notice the pictures that we've got here. That tells you an awful lot about the structures. And I was struck when we came into the country by the structures that are there. The statues of Buddha, the places of worship, which are so lavish compared to what the people themselves are living in house-wise. That makes a big difference, and it tells you an awful lot about the people. So we're looking at those. Lonely Planet is one that I like to look at, and so I opened it up as well, because they often have some interesting travel information that might be of help for you. Now notice here, over 100 ethnic groups. Now the missionary is interested in the Shan people up in the area where he's going to be, but we need to realize that there are many other ethnic groups there as well, over 100 of them, and so we don't want to close our eyes to what might be very simple to be able to reach. And then if we come down here and we go to the next page, we'll be able to pop up another one, which is one of my favorites. Well, I said we would. Let's see here. It's not showing up on this particular flip through here. I'm looking for it. Well, I'll end up taking you over there anyway. A number of things you can look at. You can begin just kind of clicking through a number of these particular places. So we're looking at structures. And certainly as we look through this information, we want to look at that, but when we get into the country itself. Wikipedia often has a good bit of information. Different people are dropping this information in here. Sometimes, as I said, it won't be completely accurate, but it can be very helpful for you. And sometimes the little sound listening to the name of the country and the way it's pronounced will be of some help for you as well. The flag of the country, the coat of arms for the country, getting an idea where the country lies, information about the country here, and then, of course, your prehistory, your Imperial Burma, British Burma, independence that took place, now military rule, and democratic reforms that are taking place at this point, human rights, different conflicts, and this is one of the problems in this particular country, that the world is very concerned about some of the human rights issues that are going on there. Demographics, the different religions, of course, primarily Buddhist in this particular country. And so we're looking at all these things, which will give us a good bit of history here. When we look at share places, one of the things I said we look at is structures. So as we'd go through the country, we'd be looking for some of the houses and the way that the structures are set up, the ones that are more important in this particular country, and the shrines that are there, which make these things very important to the people and tell you what they value the most. Then, if you will, we can go into the travel places where they'll have information here, like the Shan state, where we can learn about the Shan people. And there's been some difficulty between the government and the Shan people in the past. And, of course, that added to the issue, which meant when we went in the country, we had to have a government watcher that was with us. He reported everywhere we went, the people we met with. And, of course, we had no problem with that because we weren't doing anything or intending to do anything that in any way would disrupt the government or be against the terms of the legal issues there. We were there simply for one thing, and that's to preach Jesus Christ. And so there were no problems while we were there, and we were thankful for that. But notice some of these people, the Lisu people, you may be familiar with. Lahu people, we came across a number of those, and the Aka people. We met a number of both of these two groups of people, a little bit on the Lisu people. The Lisu people are a real interesting group. Won't go into talking about them. But these things can tell you something here about the people themselves. You can go reading about some of the different locations, destinations where people go, some of the travel information. Here's some fact information about the culture, the land, sports, religion, etc. Your guidebooks. Oh my, just so much stuff on the internet that you can get today, and it really is worthwhile. Here's Lonely Planet. They often come up with some information that's of real interest as well. And so we're looking for household habits now. We talked about structures just a little bit, household habits. I'm just giving you a quick rundown here. Household habits would be how do they prepare their food, where do they prepare their food, where do they cook. Some people cook inside a house, some outside, somehow outside, depending on culture groups. They have outside cooking places. Some do it with a fire. Some do it with, like in America, you'd have a gas stove or an electric stove to be able to use, and so on. you can begin learning about these things, and when do they get up, and how do they handle the house, who takes care of the house chores, and those kind of things. Then you can go to the CIA. Now, the CIA has a great deal of information on every country imaginable. You can come here, you can learn about the government, about the society, about transportation, about the military, just a number of things. This can become very, very helpful for you. Rituals is another one. We're looking at this acrostic of share. S for structures, H for house habits, R is for rituals. Rituals as in what are the things that they do when they get married? What are the things they do when they have a child? How long does the mother stay out of circulation in public? What is taboo and what is not? What do you do when you get married? What about at times of death and so on? All of these kind of things that we want to be able to learn about. Then you can go as well to this particular site, peoplesoftheworld.org, and you can look up the different people groups that are there. You'll notice the way they dress. You'll notice their hats, the clothing that they wear. You'll notice the things that they use for toys, the way in which they sell things, their economic issues, how they take care of themselves, the housing that they live in. All of these things become important, and it's all part of public life. Now, think about it now. We're talking about share places. The S is structures, H is house habits, R is rituals, but then we come to places. P stands for public life. What goes on in their public life? How do they sell? How do they buy? How do they get their food? How do they get their clothes? Where do they get their clothes? Where do the people shop? And we just found some wonderful places to be able to eat off the beaten path instead of going to the normal tourist traps. We found one place where we actually ate for just about $1 a plate. And I splurged that day and bought for 9 people. Cost me about $9 to feed everybody, and it was a wonderful meal. And now at the tourist traps, we probably would have paid $5 a meal for that same meal, but we got away for $1 a meal. I was very happy to be the extravagant buyer on that particular day. Then there are life cycles. What goes on when people die? How do they handle older people as they get older? Here's things like kinship and marriage, and this is under everyculture.com, another excellent website to be able to come up with some information along the way. And then there's the Joshua Project. Now, you need to understand that when you come to a place like the Joshua Project, they're going to have an awful lot of information about the people groups. They're going to show you things about where they live and how they live and so on. There we go. Okay. Southeast Asia, you notice right next to Thailand. Notice the cluster of where the Shan people live right here. And these kind of things, you can find out an awful lot about their spiritual backgrounds here. And so here we're looking for their spiritual side of things. We're looking for how they raise their children, how they take care of their children, and so on. Now, please remember when you go to sites like this, that these sites, when they talk about Christian, their definition is not going to be as narrow as the Bible is. They're not necessarily talking about truly born-again people. They're just talking about people that are nominal Christians in many cases. And so it's important for you to make the distinction here, but you can still glean a great deal of information. Then you can come here and just begin to search. This is what I like to do, is Myanmar missions and Myanmar Baptist missions. Here's OMF, which will give you some information about missions from the OMF standpoint. And again, not a strong biblical basis necessarily, though they're going to give you some good evangelical material, if you would call it that. But then you can go to places like this, which would be the BMA, Baptist Missionary Association. So now you're getting into more of a Baptist life view of what's going on at this particular time. And they're going to tell you about people that are there and what's going on in the culture. You can read about this. Generally, I find in these kind of websites, there's not a lot of information, but you can find out some good information. So as we look at this, share places, what we did is we went into the countries. We just very simply started going around paying attention to these things, and I made some notes as I went through, looking at structures, at house habits, and rituals, share. And I looked for things dealing with public life, life cycles, how they raise their children and deal with their children, and finally their spiritual life. That's places. And that acrostic helps me be able to kind of keep my information somewhat organized, if you will, and somewhat of a reasonable way of approaching these kind of things. We had a tremendous time. While we were in the country, we were there 2.5 weeks. We were in Myanmar itself for 3 days, not for 2.5 weeks, but we were dealing with a number of people all throughout Thailand and Myanmar, and learning about the people and some of the opportunities of reaching people. I really do have some exciting things to share with you along the way about how to set up research and making the whole idea of a strategy of reaching people. We're going to talk a lot more about that in coming episodes here of this particular Master Ministry. And so I'm glad that you joined me today. This is Doug Hammett again with Master Ministry. And I want to just encourage you to go to our website there, take a look at what we've got. Get in touch with me at P.D. Hammett. My name's Doug Hammett, and the P stands for passionary. Yes, used to be a pastor, now I'm a missionary, so passionary, if you will. Passionary Doug Hammett at gmail.com. And drop me an email if you've got a question or if you've enjoyed this, it's of some help to you. I'll be glad to elaborate more if you've got some questions along the way. This is Master Ministry, and we're all about tips and tools and truths, dealing with not only ministry that would be approved of God, but second, also that would be effective for the gospel of Jesus Christ. Thanks so much for joining me. I pray God will bless you. Take care.